Folks, we've got a mixed bag of insane Marvel news. Sony has delayed the Morbius film until 2021. Acclaimed action director Michael Bay has also signed a massive contract with Sony, leading some to speculate that we might be getting Michael Bay Marvel movies.
Just got real.
What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Sink your vampire fangs into that like button and let's get right into this news. Wild times out there in the world. Yesterday, Sony announced that they are moving the Morbius movie from its original July 31st date of this year all the way to March 19th in 2021. This is a pretty wild move, a pretty bold move for a couple of different reasons. First up, it indicates that Sony is foregoing the video on demand route. They're not really considering that. They want Morbius to be in theater. Second, they are sticking to a date, which I think is really good. It's a sign of confidence. And also the date particularly seems smart. It seems like at that time next year, things should be back to normal or back to whatever the new normal is. And so I think it's a pretty good move. Now, executive producer Ryan H. and myself talked about this at length earlier today on the morning stream over on our live streaming channel. You can find that link somewhere up here if you want to check out the full discussion. But I'll surmise a few of the things that we talked about on the stream and just what we think this means. First of all, again, this is probably a very smart date. If you look at what Warner Brothers did with Wonder Woman 1984, moving it into August, that seemed really optimistic, and I'm really not sure if that date will even stick. They might have to move it again. But by moving Morbius a full year, that's very smart. We should be out of the weeds with whatever is happening right now. And again, you know, they're clearly sticking to the theaters. They want it to be a theater experience, so the date itself seems like a pretty safe bet. It strangely also feels like Sony could come out of this as big winners, and they could really start to build momentum for their Sony Marvel Universe. Currently, Venom 2 is still slated for October 2nd of this year. Again, that might be at a time when things are starting to get back to normal in the world, and Venom 2 will probably get a lot of people to go out to the theater to check it out. The first film grossed over $800 million. You've now got Carnage coming in. You've got the added weight of fans realizing that this is a shared universe being built and that Tom Holland is going to be back in that universe eventually, probably, likely, I think so. You've got Woody Harrelson, you've got Andy Serkis. That's going to be a big film for Sony. So you're going to have Venom come out later in this year, and then you can ride that momentum right into early 2021 and showcase Morbius. And another way that Sony got really lucky with this whole situation is this continuity that they have. Their continuity is not as stringent as the MCU, and so when a few things get delayed, like Black Widow for the MCU, it seemingly has a big effect on how the other things can release. And I know there's been some speculation that Black Widow being delayed will not screw up the MCU continuity. Maybe Black Widow is a special case that's kind of out of the continuity. But once we get to Falcon and the Winter Soldier and we start getting into the next series of movies, they are going to be connected in a very succinct way. And so any adjustments to one of those movies has to adjust the other ones. Now, when we look at Morbius and Venom 2, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Venom 2 seems to be focusing on Carnage. It's going to be Venom versus Carnage. That seems to be the big story thread there. And although we have recently seen Venom in some graffiti on the set of the Morbius movie, the Morbius film is its own thing. It looks to be very confined and not tie into what is happening in Venom 2. They also have that unnamed Sony Marvel movie that is now slated for October 8th of 2021. And so you could see how this might actually start to build a lot of momentum for the Sony Marvel Universe. You get Venom 2, it pops, then you get people to check out Morbius. Then later that year, you're going to have whatever that unnamed Sony Marvel movie is, and if everything else can go well with Spider-Man, you'll still have the Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, which is technically an MCU movie and a Sony movie happening that year. And so, you know, we were starting to say, wow, this is going to be crazy because there's going to be 3 to 4 MCU movies per year starting next year. Well, now you're going to have a 2021 that might have 3 Sony Marvel movies in it. And I know, Marvel fans, I've seen your posts on Reddit. I've seen what you've been tweeting out about this, and I know there's a lot of hate within the MCU fan community for what Sony is doing. And I get that. You're free to feel however you want to feel about that. But for me personally, I like the idea of having this other flavor of Marvel stories. I like the idea of Tom Holland going over there, and especially now at a time where after we start to get back to normal, fans are going to be wanting to go out, go to the theaters, experience things, but also they're looking for like new entertainment. They want good entertainment and possibly a new cinematic universe. I think a lot of this stuff might actually look to serve Sony. This could all be looking good for Sony. So of course, let us know your thoughts about that, about the Morbius delay and how you think all that momentum will go. But now we got to talk about the really good news here. And this all has to do with the possibility of Michael Bay Marvel movies.
Just got real.
In an exclusive broke by Deadline, we discovered that Michael Bay has signed a massive deal with Sony Pictures. The deal will include development of television, but also movies. Now, let's be clear about this. This deal is actually just for producing, and Michael Bay has done an incredible job of producing different movies and shows throughout the years. But there's also the possibility that he steps in to direct. This is very similar to the big deals that both Dan and Dave signed with Netflix and that J.J. Abrams' company Bad Robot signed with Warner Brothers. And so you can assume that Michael Bay will be developing a lot of great content over at Sony. So it looks to me like the Sony Marvel Universe just got a million times more explosive. And again, Ryan and I talked about this on the morning show. Maybe you should go check that out if you want the full discussion. But honestly, I almost can't think of anything more on brand than having Michael Bay involved with what Sony is doing with their Marvel stuff. I mean, if you look at what we've seen from Morbius and what we've seen from Venom 1, it almost feels like the Sony Marvel Universe is taking place in the 90s. It's got a very 90s comic book movie aesthetic, and I think Michael Bay really fits very nicely into that. We've also been hearing a lot of crazy stuff about the other projects that Sony is developing, maybe even Man-Wolf and Solo, maybe the Spider-Woman movie, and they look to be building towards some crazy big event films, much like the Avengers movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, the one big thing that I think Sony is missing is a great sense of how to direct and depict crazy big action sequences. Marvel has mastered that, and Marvel Studios actually has their own directors and people that make those action set pieces, so that when the directors for these various Marvel films come on board, these action set pieces are already established and they're basically shot. They're not really shot by the directors that come on to direct the movies. Marvel has their own system for that, but Sony does not. And if you look at Venom, one of the big things that sort of lacks is scope and scale with its action sequences. And if they want to go bigger and bolder and do some of the crazy things that Marvel has done with the different Avengers movies, they're going to need someone just like Michael Bay that will be able to help them produce these beautiful and bombastic action set pieces. I just think, in general, that's what Michael Bay brings. He brings scope. That's one of the things you can't really deny about his producing and about his directing. It's scope. It's grand. It's big. It's very cinematic, right? So a lot of people have talked about him being sort of like the McDonald's of directors. It's very basic. It's, you know what you're getting, but everybody eats it up. They love it. It feels great to see it all on screen. And so I really think it's a kind of brilliant fit. Although, to be fair, there's nothing in the deal specifically that says that Michael Bay will be developing stuff for their Marvel side of things. But I mean, let's just be real. Their most profitable movie of all time was Spider-Man Far From Home. They've also already floated ideas of doing a Spider-Man live-action show. I think Sony wants to do a ton of Spider-Man stuff, and I really and truly believe that Michael Bay could literally be a good fit for this and also possibly redeem his brand and his name to the different nerds out there, because I know a lot of nerds were hurt by Michael Bay and what he did to the Transformers film. And I'm with you. He should have left that franchise a long, long time ago. I get it. However, ever. Even Bumblebee was produced by Michael Bay, and that is probably the best Transformers movie that they have done. And so I think he can still work within this system, and if he gives us some incredible Sony Marvel stuff, I think the nerds might forgive him. It might be good for his brand, and it might be good for the Sony fans. And now let's shout out Sean Stanton. Yes, indeed, Hope Summers was the name of the very first mutant that was born after the House of M. So shout out to you, Sean. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. And today's nerd card question is, what other famous, huge action director was set to actually do a Spider-Man movie? That's right, Marvel fans. One of the greatest action directors of all time at one time was set up to do a Spider-Man film. Who was it? Who am I talking about? Answer that question in the comments section below. If you absolutely need more nerdy content, you can click or tap some of the videos over there and get lost down a nerdy rabbit hole with us. Make sure you like the video if you liked it and share it out with somebody that you think might find it interesting. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.